Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the proceedings of the Grand Rapids Public School Board. Today is Monday, August 10th, and we will jump right into things. Ms. Shockey, can you please take the roll?
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Davis.
Here.
Dr. Flores.
Present.
Ms. Lewis is excused. Reverend Matias.
Present.
Mr. Ross.
Present.
Ms. Shockey is here. Mrs. Williams.
Present.
And President Grant.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Support.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed, same sign. All right. We have 2 action items on the agenda for tonight. Dr. Roby, would you like to have any words before we get into discussion or a vote?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, board members. Tonight you will receive the final presentation of our fall opening of the school year with respect to the COVID-19 preparedness plan. As a quick reminder of the timeline and the work that has been completed thus far. The KISD in June received nearly 4,000 responses from parents, GRPS parents, specifically on the safety question. 71% said they are extremely or very confident that distance learning would be the safest route for our district. Last month, districts were told to come up with a return to learn plan, which included options such as virtual, hybrid, or in-person learning. After Governor Whitmer released her executive order and the State of Michigan schools roadmap, we surveyed parents again. Mid-July, GRPS parents and staff were asked for their input. Overwhelmingly, our community stated they felt most comfortable with the 100% virtual online model. Nearly 7,000 parents representing more than 12,000 students, 48% of those chose distance learning as their preferred option, followed by the hybrid of 26% and in-person learning at 25%. Of the 1,000 staff members who responded, 53% preferred distance learning, followed by 25% for hybrid and 33% for in-person learning. Our district leadership team began working on the plan. We have included input from principals, teachers, and other staff as the plan has evolved. We have shared the plan with board members, principals, teachers, and our broader community. Last week, if you recall, we hosted a virtual town hall meeting, allowing community members to ask questions related to our plan. The return to learn plan was recorded, and it was also placed on our district website. We have answered over 200 inquiries related to the plan, and at present we have a frequently asked questions or FAQ on the website as a reference point for additional information. Dr. Gorman is going to provide a brief overview and the final presentation of our COVID-19 preparedness plan. That is a mouthful for me tonight, I apologize, for your approval this evening. Once approved, we will add the plan to the district's website, and we will also submit it to the Michigan Department of Education. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Gorman.
Thank you, Dr. Roby. Madam President, members of the board, I have a very brief presentation that I would like to show you this evening. We've presented to you a few times on this topic, as Dr. Roby alluded to. So if you just give me a second, I will share my screen. Okay. Thumbs up, Dr. Roby, if you can see it okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So here is our plan. So let me walk you through. So of course, components of the plan. So when we are in phases 1 through 3, instruction will take place through a distance learning format. There is no other format that is approved through phases 1 through 3. while in phase 4, which allows for in-person instruction, we, the Grand Rapids Public Schools, out of an abundance of caution, will begin our 2020 school year in a 100% distance learning format. So we've shared this many times. For the first 9 weeks of this school year, we're going to follow a distance learning format. We talked about device and internet access for all students. We're going 1-to-1 this year. That is different from any other year in the Grand Rapids Public Schools. One of the components of the plan is that we will continue with meal distribution. So we're going to distribute meals 3 days per week, but students will be receiving breakfast and lunch. So on some days we will be doubling up. There will be mandatory grading of assignments and assessments this time around. Last time there were lots of credit, no credit opportunities, but this time we will be grading assignments and assessments, and grades will be given to students at the end of 9 weeks. Attendance is, of course, mandatory. Mondays and Fridays in the elementary setting, those are going to be days where we have lots of asynchronous instruction. Of course, Fridays at the high school level is also where we're going to have asynchronous instruction. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are going to be heavy with synchronous instruction, comparable to the way that we are interacting this evening. Professional learning for all of our staff members will be conducted exclusively online. There will be no bringing folks together, no outdoor professional learning. Everything will be completed or conducted rather through an exclusively online format. As I mentioned in some previous presentations, we are going to have professional learning on COVID response procedures, learning management systems, of course, Seesaw, Schoology, and Google Classroom. Also, some areas on which we will focus: social emotional learning, the curriculum, equity, implicit bias, and culturally responsive teaching. And also we will focus on our at-risk students. Synchronous and asynchronous modes of instruction will be used for professional learning. So there are times when all staff members are brought together in a synchronous learning format, and there will be other opportunities where staff members will complete modules. Again, I spoke of the platforms. We have agreed that Seesaw is going to be for elementary. Google Classroom will be 6 through 12. And then we have some pilot sites for Schoology, which is, of course, an LMS. And it's really an kind of one-stop shop LMS. And we're really excited about piloting it in some schools. Another thing that's different this time around is, of course, building access. Our teachers did not have building access last time. There was really one day where they could come in and get their belongings, but this time they'll have building access from 8 o'clock until 3 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. And then, of course, Fridays and over the weekend will be used for cleaning. Student assessments, we are mandated in this plan to assess our students right away over the first couple of weeks. So that's what we will do in the Grand Rapids Public Schools. We will use an existing GRPS assessment to assess our students on grade level proficiencies. Loop after school programming will continue. This will be done in a distance learning format. As of right now, athletics will continue following the MHSAA guidelines. I know there were lots of announcements today about college sports, but as of right now, we will continue using those MHSAA guidelines. So how directed, we will follow that plan. Class schedules and teacher assignments will be mailed by Thursday, August 13. So by the end of this week, we will have those class schedules for our secondary students mailed to households, and then assignments for the elementary grades. Families will know who their students' teachers are. Okay, so I talked a lot about phases 1 through 3 and also a little bit in phase 4. During phases 4 and 5, when students are in face-to-face instruction, we are going to adopt a hybrid model. So we talked about this a little bit last time. This could be a Monday, Tuesday with one group, a cleaning day, and then a Thursday, Friday with another group, in every other week model. And the reason that we're doing that is because we want a schedule that really complements all all the safety protocols that are in place. It's going to be very difficult in our classrooms to social distance if we have the entire class there each day. So the class sizes will be approximately 50%, and we will be able to social distance in our classrooms. We, of course, are going to have adequate supplies to support healthy hygiene behaviors. Facial coverings will be worn by all staff and students, except for those times when we are eating. Of course, face mask will not be recommended for children ages 3 and 4. We'll be
Excuse me, Dr.
cooperating.
Gorman. I'm sorry. We're getting a little bit of breaking up with your connection. I want to make sure that people can hear you. Can we switch you to phone audio? So I've gotten a message from Craig, and so he may be messaging you to help you with that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I just want to make sure that everyone's able to hear you.
So.
Yep. So Dr. Gorman, this is Craig.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If you can just click on the arrow next to your audio mute, there's an option there for switch to phone audio, and then you'd be able to dial from your desk phone that's right there.
So I'll have to stop sharing then, Craig, for a second?
You should be able to still get to that even though you're sharing. It would be up at the top with the rest of your sharing controls.
Right by your mute button, there's a little arrow right next to it.
I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing just for a second.
That's fine. That might make it a little easier to find.
And then you want me to mute then?
No, just use the little arrow that's next to your mute button.
Okay. Got it.
And then you should see switch to phone audio.
Okay.
And then it'll give you the dial in there.
So dial one of
the
the
good news
numbers.
is we can hear you perfectly now.
Of course.
Do you want me to try to complete my presentation? I only have a couple more slides, Ms. Grant.
Craig, what are your thoughts?
It probably is in part due to the sharing, was probably impacting him a little bit. So, you know, we're right on the line, so I think it's up to you.
What I can do, Ms. Grant, is if you don't mind, I can take the last couple pages and just share with you what's on those. And then I can also share this email with the group. It's just a really high level summary of what you all have access to on board docs.
Right,
that okay?
That's fine. That works. Thank you.
Okay, so just give me 1 second, please. Just
I'm sorry.
No problem. Okay, so we talked about adequate supplies to support healthy hygiene behaviors. Facial coverings will be worn by staff and students, except for meals. And of course, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds will not be wearing masks. We're going to continue to cooperate with our local public health department regarding protocols for screening students and staff. Every school will designate a quarantine area for students and staff members to care for students who become ill at school. Students who develop COVID-19 symptoms will be sent home from school until they have tested negative or have completely recovered according to CDC guidelines. Staff should complete daily examinations, including temperatures, prior to coming to work. And staff should stay home if they have a temperature of 100.4 or greater. And then lastly, again, just to reiterate, GRPS will cooperate with the local health department if a confirmed case is identified and collect contact information for any close contacts. Again, that was a relatively high summary of everything that we've shared with you for the last couple of weeks. In board docs, there is a more thorough document. I don't want to share one with all of my writing on it. Just give me 1 second. Which looks like this, the COVID-19 document. And so at this time, of course, I will take questions or I will follow Dr. Roby's lead.
Dr. Gorman, that AB hybrid piece, I missed that. Was that every couple of days or every other week? I missed the details on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course we will, this wouldn't be until we were in face-to-face instruction.
Yes.
A couple of options that are on the table, one of which is the Monday, Tuesday, same group option, Wednesday, deep cleaning day, Thursday, Friday, another group. And on the days where the students aren't attending school, they would have asynchronous assignments, right? So I'll go to school, work with my teacher for 2 days. And then when I'm home, I'm working on asynchronous assignments, still in distance learning. The other option would be an every other week option. I think for consistency, we like the Monday, Tuesday, 1 day break, and then the Thursday, Friday option a little bit better than the every other week. But again, we want to continue to dialogue with our teachers union. We've been sharing our plan throughout this process of just very good discussions with our teachers union. We had one on Friday, provided lots of suggestions, but that is that hybrid model, Mr. Ross.
Gotcha. So even if, again, just for clarity, even if as a state we go to phase 4, we're still 100% distance for the first 9 weeks. So we would only consider hybrid in phase 4 if it occurred after our first 9 weeks. Is that accurate?
I'll let Dr. Roby answer that, Mr. Ross.
That is not necessarily accurate. We made a decision based around kind of where we were and the feedback that we got from our constituents related to their preferences. And with us being in phase 4 at present, and as you'll notice, some districts have decided to do online for the first couple of weeks, and then they're eventually rolling to hybrid, which is what we're suggesting as well. We are just taking kind of a longer on-ramp to that, partially due to the size of our district. And we want to certainly ensure that we have all of those safety measures in place so that we're able to do the AB schedule as Dr. Gorman suggested, but not exclusively. We won't say that, you know, we have to be in phase 5 to move to the hybrid model, just because we may not move to phase 5 for a longer period of time than what we're anticipating.
But it's not something that we would consider doing the first 9 weeks though.
We could. I mean, it's with the plan, what we've shared with folks is that the plan is initially the first 9 weeks because we wanted to give people kind of at least the first marking period, but it is flexible and adjustable, where if we're seeing based around kind of what's taking place in the community, if we're able to kind of stabilize our infection rate, then we may decide to slowly bring students back in. And Dr. Gorman didn't say this yet, but one of the things that we have started to work on, the team has begun to work on, is kind of what that roll-in will look like so that we are ready if we are able to move forward into the hybrid model sooner than what we anticipate.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? We're going to open it up for the discussion time. I know that we have received a lot of feedback, so now would be the time if you have questions or thoughts to share around some of those. I know for me personally, and we've addressed this, but I want to make sure that it's clear. When people have concerns about the length of time for elementary students, and not just the total length of time for the day, but I think more so about the back-to-back time and their engagement, how will that really be broken down for our younger students?
I couldn't get to the unmute fast enough. We do have recommended guidelines that I certainly will share with all of you that research has supported about the timelines, and what we'll suggest for teachers and what they are working on right now in their plans is having those transition times and those mini breaks and such. So it's not just 3 hours straight, similar to what you would expect to see in a normal classroom, where you might take brain breaks and you might do activities where you're working in smaller groups. So it's not consistently 3 hours straight. They'll have shorter bursts of time. And we even have been working with our lower elementary, those pre-K through first grade teachers and staff related to what that looks like. So we do have some sample schedules that I can certainly share with folks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that you all have about the plan?
I have one. I just want to share some of the feedback that I've been receiving as well, specifically in regard to assessments. There was kind of a perception that we were leading with assessments rather than leading with, like, what is the community relationship aspect of how we start this school year. And I even remember watching you, Dr. Roby, Dr. Gorman, Mr. Helmholtz, when we got the question in the town hall about like, how are we going to make this fun and exciting, right? And like all of your faces changed, you smiled. And I just think like even that little reminder that that's what's really important right now, it really matters in this first week. You know, we have the vast majority of our students meeting a new teacher and meeting many new classmates, some familiar faces. So I just wonder if we can help to try to change that perception a bit that no, we don't want to start the first day of school and run full steam into assessments and benchmark our kids. And that's what matters, because in my mind, that's not what matters most. I know we need to figure out where everybody is because that's how we're going to be able to teach. But I guess I'm just broadly asking the question, like, how do we encourage our staff and our families and support them and knowing that, you know, this is the time for us to
build relationships and build community.
You got it.
And that's just it. I think that it is critically important just for that, to build relationships, build community. There should be some, and I think about my own teaching experience where you would do kind of a getting to know you activity during those first couple of days where you have an opportunity for you as the teacher to share a little bit about who you are, and then also invite students to share a little bit about who they are. And no, you cannot begin, you know, hi, I'm, you know, Ledrian Roby. I'm going to give you an assessment. That is probably the worst structure that anybody would suggest. And so what we will do is continue to work with our building principals, engage our teachers around what does that look like? How do you welcome students into your classroom? And this is where it's a little unique, because when we went into our virtual learning format this past spring, teachers knew their students, of course, and so they had already built a sense of community. The students knew one another as well. And I think it really is critical that teachers figure out some ways to kind of introduce themselves, some activities or games that you can do with students. And we can help structure some of that, but we will certainly reiterate it's about building classroom community, building expectations, and you do that in collaboration with your students. It's not just, these are the rules of my classroom. It's how do you kind of set the tone of, this is what our classroom looks like, and how do you want to be a part of the classroom, and things of that nature. And the teachers are phenomenal at doing that, but we just have to remind them and maybe give them permission to do some of those same kind of structures that you would for setting the tone of how you want your classroom to function.
That's great, thank you. I saw on the plan, I believe that the assessments are scheduled for the first week. Is that true?
We talked about that a little bit earlier today, and then we had also said, because we do want to, obviously we have to do some assessments, and I would not recommend it the first couple of days of school, but just structuring some of those times. And then keep in mind that Friday is a day where students would have some asynchronous learning. And so that would be an ideal time to start pulling small groups and setting some times to listen to them read, and reading passages and things of that nature to kind of see where they are with respect to their learning. But and Ron can talk about this a little bit more, but we talked about doing it over the course of a couple of weeks to make sure that we didn't get too far into the school year where we weren't really able to assess how much they knew at the beginning of the school year versus what our impact and influence has been since they've been with us. Dr. Gorman, do you want to kind of elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the components of the plan where students need to be assessed relatively quickly. I'm looking for the exact language. We discussed this morning in our academic team that it says over the first few days of school, which gives us a little bit of wiggle room. We can, of course, go back and make that adjustment. In the presentation I showed this evening, we actually referenced the first 2 weeks of school, because we know those first few days are about relationship building, helping students familiarize themselves with technology, finding out who's not connected. And to be quite honest, if we're assessing on the first day of school, I mean, that is really not the best day to do anything like that. So we're going to use some common sense as well, Ms. Shockey, but thank you for bringing that up. It's not our intent to assess students as soon as they roll onto a call.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you.
Again, just trying to dispel perceptions, it's the most important thing sometimes. Good, there's also been questions about, like, is there a safe way for students and teachers to meet, like an open house, and I don't know if it's possible, but again, just sharing what questions the community has asked, again, to form those relationships early on, but that's a big ask, I realize.
Dr. Rowe?
At this time, we're saying no. We want to make sure, again, that we are keeping people safe and that they feel comfortable. And with an open house, you'd have lots of people together in a building, and we just don't feel like that's the best course of action.
Thanks again.
But let me say this, they are doing virtual open houses. I should have probably said that. There will be some virtual open houses, so there just won't be the in-person ones.
Great.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that you all have before we move forward with a vote?
I have a question. Forgive me if this was covered, but if a teacher gets sick, even though we're virtual, we do have a lot of synchronous learning. So what's the plan as far as if a teacher is sick and not able to teach synchronous?
So he or she would have to, of course, report their absence like they normally would if we were in person. And then we would try to secure a sub. And if we were not able to do that, we would follow our normal procedures around having either, if we couldn't secure a guest teacher, having some other supports with our building administrators or others who would cover that teacher's class. But if they are too sick to report to duty, so to speak, then they would follow their normal procedures of reporting their absence.
So that means that there's a substitute management system that's going to be prepared to do synchronous classes.
Yes, we have a substitute management system, and those teachers have been trained and will be trained on how to support that teacher's classroom as they are the guest teacher for that day or couple of days.
At the elementary level, when same grade level teachers are obviously doing planning together and similar lessons, is there any possibility for them to take on another class when the teacher is sick? Or are we going to definitely be taking in a substitute teacher each time that happens?
So our preference would be to have a guest teacher when available. And if not, then we'd have to figure out, and similarly, if whenever we've had substitute shortages, we've had to assign students within the teachers who are available in an in-person format. So we'd have to figure out a structure for that. And okay. I assume, and I'm probably going to get myself a little bit into the weeds here, as that has not been my experience in this district, because I don't know how deep our sub pool is, but I assume that we do have a broad enough pool where we're able to cover our subs most days. But again, I know that this is a unique situation, and there's also a national sub shortage as I say this, but we would try, again, teachers report. The advantage, quite honestly, is if in this kind of scenario, if somebody's just kind of feeling under the weather, but is not too sick, they're able to probably still teach and not have to necessarily record an absence.
Thank you.
This is Mrs. Williams. I have a question with regards to our decision to not require teachers to go into the schools. That's one I have heard from the community. So if you could just kind of share with us what the thought process was and how that decision was made. Not that I don't personally have an issue with it, and I support that decision. However, again, that was a question from the community. So if there was some clarity around that, that would be great.
So we have left it open for teachers to be available to go into their classrooms, and it makes it a little bit more challenging. You think about, when everybody could not go into their rooms, people who are, and I'll use specials teachers or the specialist teachers who may have had additional equipment, or science teachers that were trying to conduct labs and such as demonstrations. It becomes a little bit more challenging, and many teachers are wanting to get into their classroom. We just wanted to allow that flexibility. If you are able to get in your classroom and you want and you desire to do so, we have that space available for you. But if you're not able to do it, you are still expected to engage your students during the timeframes that we've outlined, plan with your team. And so your day will still look very similar, whether you are physically in your home or elsewhere or physically in the classroom. Does that answer your question, Ms. Williams?
It does. Thank you so much.
I just have a wondering if I could, wondering from a parent perspective, a parent that wants to ensure that their child or their children are on task, meeting their learning objectives. Is there a scope and sequence of learner outcomes that we expect by grade level that could be accessed either online or in a packet that a parent could help to support alignment of instructional learning at home to make sure that their children are on grade level and on task and are actually engaged in learning the outcomes that are expected for that particular grade level?
So great question, Dr. Flores. As you probably are aware, as a former teacher and principal, there is something, and I don't know that we have a direct link, but we can certainly make that available for families. All classroom teachers by their content area are supposed to follow the Michigan grade level standards by that particular content. And so as I say this, I know that that's available online at the Michigan Department of Education, but we can certainly provide a link for it so people can see what should a fifth grader, what are the math standards for a fifth grader? What are the literacy standards for a third grader, so that families are able to see that. And so it is available. We can certainly make that link, but if they're asking for specifics of what the teacher is doing, teachers are being asked to make sure that they prepare their lessons and make their lessons available to families Sunday evening, 11:59, Dr. Gorman, right? By 11:59, so we don't get confusion over if it's Sunday or Monday evening, so families are able to see what those lessons are. And typical, and so I'm saying typical of most lesson plans, there's usually a reference point as to what state standard, what standard it meets. So, and that's usually for reference of the teacher. So he or she is able to say, okay, I'm teaching fractions and this matches, state standard, blah, 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 blah. And then so people can kind of connect that and check in on that. And that may be more information than what people want, but as a very general answer, yes, the Michigan Department of Education has the state standards that students should be able to master for each content area by their grade level. And we can certainly make that link for families.
And if I could just expand on that also to apply that same concept of knowledge and skills required for technology by grade level. I mean, I would like to know, if I were a parent of an elementary school student, just how much my children need to know to manage this technology, and to compare that also, or to contrast it with a high schooler, what skills do they need to have mastered in order to function adequately and proficiently in a technological virtual world environment.
And I love that. And so here's where I'm not as familiar with Michigan standards. So I'm going to take a leap as I say this, and please correct me, educators, if I'm incorrect. What my most familiarity, of course, would have been the state that I just left, and the technology standards, to your point, they're separate as a standalone, but they're also embedded in both literacy and social studies, so that you're able to see how they correlate with kind of the development of the student. And then also there's like kind of the basic standards of, what should you be able to navigate and doing presentations and things. So there's a logistics side, and then there's the instructional academic side that are embedded into other content areas.
Exactly. Thank you.
Dr. Gorman, am I correct? Does Michigan have that as well? Okay, I figured they did.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute there. They're formatted in a comparable way, Dr. Roby.
Okay.
Yes, we do. Not they, we.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, if we have no more comment or discussion, I am going to ask for a motion to approve the COVID-19 Preparedness Response Plan resolution?
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Shockey, if you can please take the roll.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis is excused. Reverend Matthias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Shotke, yes. Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
President Grant.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have the purchasing agenda, and this includes the Schoology LMS as a part of that agenda. Are there any questions or discussion items for this before we move forward with the vote? Okay, if not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Shockey, Mrs. Shockey?
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis is excused. Reverend Matthias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Mrs. Shotke, yes. Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
and President Grant.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And just a clarifying point, that purchase agenda that included the purchase of that LMS is still being used for a trial. It will not be full implementation across the district as of yet, but a few different buildings will be, I'm losing my words, but will be piloting. Thank you. Thank you. That's the word. They will be piloting the management system for us. Next, we do have one person for public comment, Stephanie Godot. I hope that I pronounced that correctly. Craig, if she is available to join us.
Ms. Grant, it doesn't appear that there's anyone in the meeting by that name at the moment.
Okay. All right. She did leave a note that if she wasn't able to stay until the end, that she requested a follow-up. So Julie does have her question, and it is about receiving work on paper. I'm sorry, I don't have all of my language today, but she wanted to know about paper packets for student work. And so if we can just make a note to follow up with her and answer questions for her. I believe that is all that we have on the agenda this evening. So our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.